Welcome to episode 3 of the Amateurish Podcast. We were going to call it Everybody Has a Podcast, but I'm pretty sure that's already been taken. He's Logan, I'm Rhett.
On today's episode, we're going to quick rundown before we get into things. We're going to do our reaction to the NBA awards. The lottery just happened, so we're going to go over each team in the lottery and their needs. We're going to quick little segment about the combine. It's going on right now. We've been watching, just keep you all updated. Then we're going to go into college basketball, our specialty. We're going to talk about the losers of the transfer portal. Last week we did the winners. Now we're going to look at the losers at the moment. And then to end it off, I want to give a shout out to Will Wade, and we'll get a segment on him and what he's doing down at Lake Charles. All right, so let's get right into it. We'll start out with the
behind the scenes, full disclosure. This segment was solely Logan's idea. He said we don't have enough conflict here. So we'll see how much conflict this can provoke.
Okay,
fire away.
We'll start with the MVP. I know Jokic won it, and I know you full support of Jokic, and I disagree. I thought Shai should have been the MVP. I think what he did, the numbers are pretty similar in terms of like offensive contribution. And I mean, defensively, I think Shai led the league in steals, but it's not like he's an all-world defender. But I think just the Thunder were a maybe playoff team going into the season, and then they ended up being the first seed in the West. And I think that Jokic already has 2 MVPs, and the voters robbed Shai of his MVP.
I don't think we have a cap on MVPs. First of all, what we're forgetting is that but for a guy landing on Joel Embiid's meniscus, Joel Embiid was the runaway MVP candidate at that point in time. He was leading the league in scoring.
Injuries happen every year. This is
I know. I'm just saying, if we take a look back, I'm not saying there's a massive gulf between Jokic and Shai. The numbers are very, very similar when you factor in, Shai scored more, but Jokic had more assists. The only area of separation is rebounds. Again, that's
positional.
Somewhat positional. They won practically the same amount of games. I know you're not supposed to look at the playoffs. They're very similar. They both made it to the second round at least. Right now we see Denver leading their series and OKC is tied. I think part of this is you have to go through a process, rightly or wrongly. I'm saying the way NBA voters work is you have to pay your dues. It's a little bit like your playoff experience. And I think Shai popped up a little too soon for some people in the media. If they'd given it to Shai, I would not have had a huge problem. Where I think if you're going to nitpick, if you want to have a debate, the two areas that truly separate Shai and Nikola is rebounding and efficiency. Jokic is a much more efficient scorer than Shai. Defensively, yes, Shai has more steals, but that's also, again, positional. He's allowed to gamble. He's allowed to get out in transition, start breaks, and things like that. For his size, Jokic actually has, I think, a steal a game or something like that. He's actually not a bad guy in that respect. And I think if you're looking at Jokic's evolution defensively, he's become light years better than he was a few years ago.
I agree. And while I think MVP for me isn't the best player in the world. The best player in the world is Nikola Jokic. But the MVP is the most valuable player. And Shai took a team who's first of all extremely young. Their starting lineup average age is like 22, and who maybe were a playoff team, and he led them to the 1 seed in the West. And you're talking about how he kind of came up. I think this is like year 6 for Shai, and he's been averaging 30 the last 2, and he was a stud for the last 3 or 4. So I think the voters kind of robbed him of this one. And we saw D Rose win it in year 3. I think it's kind of the waiting. I
think that's a long time ago, and there was sort of an absence of stars maybe that year, not diminishing Rose's MVP by any stretch. what I meant by that is he hasn't been on the national spotlight that long. I think Anthony Edwards has a strong case if you look at
Not this
expectation
year.
versus reality. He definitely propelled Minnesota to the next level, coming off a very good summer with the USA basketball, even though they didn't perform well. He did. And so if you look at it, okay, now we know who he is nationally. He's a national name. Now we can go forward and feel confident voting for him. I think you're going to see those two guys probably 1, 2, 3 with Doncic in there next year. Again, I don't think there's much that separated the two. I don't think Shea got robbed, nor would I say Jokic would have gotten robbed had they chosen Shea. Um, the other awards, I think the depoy.
Defensive player of the year, we had Rudy win it over Bam and Victor. I gotta go with my guy Bam. I thought Bam should have won it. But I understand why they gave it to Rudy, and I think Rudy came to a point in his career where he was overhated almost, and he propelled this Timberwolves to the #1 defense in the league. But I just think Bam's versatility, like at some point, Bam's versatility has to be rewarded. Like I feel like he's always a finalist for this, and like he's the only guy on the list that can guard all 5 positions. And I mean, he's done a better job against Jokic than Rudy's doing right now. Rudy's looking like a liability on that end. I mean, he's guarding the best player in the world, but Bam did a better job in the last series. But
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point where we're going to retire the award, although he's now tied for the most depoys ever. But I really wish they would reward the perimeter defenders more. The Drew Holidays, the Herb Jones last
well,
year.
they gave it to Smart like a couple years ago. Smart. But that was like once in a last 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, the Mikal Bridges, these guys put in shifts at very difficult positions. There's rim protecting. I think has its place. You certainly could have made an argument that Wembanyama.
Yeah, but I mean his team defense, they were in the lower half of the 20s, and I mean, but I grant he led the league in blocks and stocks. But I mean, yeah, this is about to be renamed the Wemby Award, and this probably gonna be this year is probably the year he doesn't win it, and then
right.
I mean,
I don't think there's any disagreement about Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, not even close. Even though Chet had a great year. Most improved player, I disagreed with this one. They gave it to Tyrese Maxey over Sengun and Kobe White. I think this award has turned into like, oh, we're giving like already really good players who take the All-Star Leap award when it's really like Kobe White had been disappointing his whole career, 8th pick, and then he made that big jump. Like he almost doubled in production, whereas Tyrese Maxey was already like basically a 20-point a game guy that was very good.
Yeah, it's hard to give some of these awards to teams that aren't in the playoffs or the play-in.
Yeah.
I think Sengun is a very good player, and when we talk about lottery needs, that's going to be an interesting dilemma. I didn't see huge jump. I think what we saw is a realization of how good he was.
Oh, Maxey?
No,
Sengun.
With respect to Kobe White, I think there was a big statistical jump, but again, it didn't really change the fortunes of that franchise.
I mean, they made the play in. It wasn't like they were a bottom feed. I mean, they sucked, but they were.
The Rockets were what the next team out.
Yeah, but Philly's already out.
Philly, when Embiid got hurt, was able to rely on Maxey, and I think the important thing with Maxey wasn't necessarily the numerical jump. It was he showed everyone in that organization and around the league, okay, I can be the Robin to Embiid's Batman, and when he's out, I can carry this team for a bit. So I didn't have a huge problem with it. I understand what you're saying. We do tend to reward those players who are good and get even better.
Yeah.
I think the debate here is going to be when we see some of the all NBA and all rookie teams. On your all rookie team, you should have Victor, you should have Chet, you should have Miller, you should have Jaquez, and then the fifth spot, we can argue about. All NBA,
That's a discussion right there.
that's an interesting one. As I understand, Embiid would not qualify because
No,
of
he
games
doesn't.
played. You've got then your center is Jokic. Your other big is interesting, and then who are your three guards?
Shea and Luca.
And what about Ant?
Ant probably going to be the second team because they're going to put Tatum on the first team probably.
Well, Tatum could be your second big if you
guess.
if you tweak it that way. Giannis still had a very good year. I think he probably makes second team this year. Steph Curry probably makes second, third team this year, which is crazy. There's going to be some interesting discussions coming out of the all NBA selection.
Yeah, and moving on to our final award, the sixth man of the year, they gave it to the boy Naz Reid, everyone's favorite player, over Malik Monk and Bobby Portis. I have no problem with this. I think a lot of people were kind of upset that Malik Monk didn't make it, but Naz Reid's on a really good team, and the Kings were not a really good team. So I'm cool with this. I love him. Big jelly. So
Okay. I mean, Malik Monk is arguably the single worst decision Rob Pelinka made. He saw what he could do and didn't try to re-sign him. He effectively said, hey, you're a dime a dozen a player, and he's proved in Sacramento he's not. I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, you'd hear more complaint. Naz plays in a system that has figured out, okay, how do we have two bigs on the floor at the same time? Yeah. And so I think he benefits from that. He's a good player. I'm not taking anything away. I'm not mad about it. But I think Monk would have been my choice there. He was just electric and
he did have a really good year. I'll give him that for sure.
And he's one of the few players that has improved out of nowhere.
From the start of his career.
Yeah, he was a high lottery pick, had an awful run in Charlotte, and then goes on the free agent market, Lakers and Kings, and absolutely transformed his career. You don't usually see that level of improvement at this stage, at that age. So credit to him, and he's going to make some money this offseason.
Yeah, he's definitely going to command a big contract. I think he's out of Sacramento the way they were kind of talking about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's a big pickup for whoever lands him.
Are we going to touch on the Clutch Award?
Moving on. So the lottery just happened this past weekend. Atlanta got the number 1 overall pick, and they had the 3% odds to get it. It's their first overall pick in the lottery era. And again, we see this kind of recent trend of the worst team in the league not getting the 1 pick. We had the Pistons fall to 5, which very disappointing. I think you saw the Thompson twins' reaction on stage. He was the representative, and he kind of went.
This is the last time he's going to be the representative.
So yeah, we'll go through each team's their needs coming up. And we could start with Atlanta. What do you think? What do you think they gotta?
Atlanta's a really interesting. This may be one of the first times you see the number 1 pick in actual play in a long time. I know we had the Markelle Fultz trade.
In terms of who's going to get drafted?
No. I think they're pretty locked into one of 5 guys.
In terms of the trading of the pick?
Yeah, I'm talking the trading of the pick. Because Atlanta has serious decisions to make.
Yeah.
What they've proved is with this team, we're nearing the second apron, and we are not an actual playoff team.
They are mediocre.
Yeah, so a lot of the talk in the offseason is about moving Trae Young. They apparently were shopping DeJounte Murray and couldn't pull that off. Trae Young is a $48 million a year player, a nice player.
A really good player, I think.
Yeah, nice is probably the wrong word, but is he a guy who's going to lead your franchise to a championship?
No.
and you also have you have younger players like Jalen Johnson, who you kind of want to build around.
Yeah.
So would you package the number one for number one and Trae Young for guys plus take San Antonio's 4 and 8
Yeah.
or next year's top pick, something like that? I don't know.
I think right now, if they're not looking to trade the pick, obviously I think Sarr is going to be the number one pick, and I don't think Capella at this stage we have anything left to see from him. I think a big would be the way to go because I like Jalen Johnson, and Trae Young, for all his flaws, is a really good player. But with this draft, I don't know if teams are gonna go more fit based, need based, or just best player available because it's so.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on and off camera that this draft is really shaping up to be very weak,
Yeah.
disappointing. That's not a surprise. What will be a surprise is if the Pelicans take the Lakers pick this year as opposed to deferring it to next year, when arguably the Lakers should do better because they're going to have more assets to move in the summer. That's a telltale sign. If you're giving up a top, I think it's 15, the Lakers are 15 or 17,
16.
somewhere in that range, for who knows next year. Wow, that says we really don't want anything.
Yeah, we don't really care about this.
Just on court fit, I agree. Capella he's kind of
he is what he is.
Guy. Yeah. I think they like Onyeka.
No, but he's not a starter in this league, I don't think.
It's just then you kind of have to move Capella. And I don't know that there's a huge market for Capella. I think you have to have a plan going in for Atlanta. If you're going to move Trae Young, then you want to know what picks you're going to get, and one of those picks has to fill that point guard slot. And frankly, there are very few compelling point guards in this draft.
I feel bad for Atlanta. This is probably the worst year to get this lucky because they had the 10th best odds or whatever, and then they get the number one pick. And
yeah, but I do think they will pair. They could pair. They could easily trade.
I think there's good odds that we see them trading this pick.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of the talks about Trae Young, but we'll see. Number 2, if you want to move on to number 2.
Right, the Wizards.
I think for them, just get whoever that you can get. There's no one safe on that roster. You can pick whatever position you want. I would just say their needs is a hooper.
Right. Yeah, it's best available. I think you have to understand, are you going to lose Jones? If you lose Jones, maybe that puts more pressure on you to take one of the pseudo point guards, the Shepherds that deal.
They are years away. They are years away from doing damage. There's no one safe on their roster.
Yeah, I said it before the season. I am not convinced that they're 2 years away from being 2 years away. They're not like Atlanta. Atlanta
has pieces.
They were a play-in team. They could be a playoff team with the right moves. The Wizards, no, not at all.
3, we got Houston. Now this is interesting for me because going into the season, I was surprised, and they made that little push at the end of the season. I was surprised they didn't do better because I really liked some of their talent collection. Granted, they're all young, but I think they have some nice pieces, which makes it difficult to what position you're kind of going to draft because you have a guard, you have wings, you have bigs.
Yeah, I've been really down on the roster construction of the Rockets. They have a lot of good pieces, but I think what they did is when they selected Van Vliet, when they signed him, it blocked the path for Thompson in particular. But you've got guys like Cam Whitmore. Whitmore needs run.
Yeah.
Thompson needs run. Jalen Green, I don't think he's a point guard.
But ever since he that news about him becoming a father, that man turned it on. And if that's how he's going to play, then you can build around him for sure.
Yeah, I think if they're going to stay at 3, I might consider taking Klingon.
Yeah.
Taking a big Pairing him with Şengün.
Because Şengün on the defensive end is not, and more defense focused and Klingon. My concern would be Jabari Smith at the 3, but I mean
Yeah.
that could work.
But it's pushing out other guys.
Yeah,
They really have to decide, all right, who's our core?
Who's your core?
And look, if we have to move some guys off, great.
Yeah, I did not like the signing of Dylan Brooks or Fred VanVleet last year. I really think they'll block the development of some talented young guys they have.
Though they Brooks played very well. He did, I think?
Yeah, no,
better.
he did, but I'm just saying I just don't understand why they needed that,
Yeah.
especially when they were not gonna. I mean,
Contend.
they thought they were gonna contend, but
No, I agree.
4 we have San Antonio, and I think this is the most obvious. What they should pick here is a playmaker, someone who can get Wembanyama the ball.
Yeah, and they also have the 8th pick.
They also have the 8th pick. I like here maybe a Rob Dillingham, a guard who can get their guy the ball. I like him at this slot.
We'll dive a lot deeper into the
draft,
the
mock
guys.
draft,
I'm not sold on Dillingham as a point guard, a traditional facilitator. And I have a unique take here. I have 2 things I would do. One is I would get a big. I would get a thumper. If
Yeah.
Klingon was still there, maybe at 8, I reach for somebody who's a rim protector. Not that Victor isn't, but we saw Victor hold up brilliantly this year. But historically, guys his size, Chet's size, they don't last. And I think it would take some of the pressure off Victor on those nights. If you're not going to sign, let's say an Andre Drummond type, he's not really a rim protector as much, but a guy who will take some of the pressure off Victor. And then the other thing I think they have to look at doing is resetting their clock. They have pros in Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell that don't fit on a timeline of being
They're youngish.
I might flip them for younger assets, maybe a pick next year, something like that. I still don't think San Antonio's in a position to contend, but yes, they need a playmaker and they need a shooter.
Yeah, and going to that point about a big, like I like when Wemby is more in that free safety type of way where he can help and he can well, it's not like a one-on-one matchup because I think his best asset is like that he can cover so much ground. So if they have another big who can guard the big and then Wemby can be in that free safety help where he can just go be everywhere with his length. I like that idea.
But by the way, before we leave
Yeah.
the Rockets real quick.
No Spurs.
Yeah, but I wanted to go back. I
Okay.
forgot this point. I've seen Reed Shepherd, who's a hell of a player, linked with the Rockets. And to me, I'm like, why?
Doesn't fit.
It just further
Complicates their
whole roster.
Yeah.
So that would surprise me if he's the pick, and I don't think it'd be a great use of that pick.
No. So moving on to the worst team in the league, the Pistons. My Pistons. I had a take earlier before the season. I thought they were going to be not awful, and that aged awful. But I think they have some players that can turn out to be productive in this league. I like Cunningham, I like Duran, Ivy, Thompson, but I think they just need a good player. Shooting is important. They can use another big. They're one of those teams that needs it all, I feel like.
Yeah.
And are they committed to having Cade run the one?
I don't think. I think it's a lot like the Wizards. It's don't worry about fit. Get your best player here.
I think they're more talented than the Wizards. I mean, but the Wizards don't have like NBA like they do, but
yeah, but Monty Williams was not committed to Jaden Ivey, and I still don't think we know what he is. So you have to spend another year figuring that out. You have to spend another year figuring out if Cade Cunningham's definitely year one. Osar Thompson is really, really good, but again, where's his best fit.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would like to see him and his brother in Houston more on the ball. I think they're very good passers. They have great vision. And I mean, it would be an experiment, but I think, now I'm not saying run the one, but just put the ball in their hands more. But yeah, I think they should just take a good player.
yeah. Yeah.
Moving on to 6, we got Charlotte. Obviously, they have their franchise point guard with LaMelo. I like Mark Williams, the big. Some shooting would be nice to stretch the floor further for LaMelo. Brandon Miller is very good.
Yeah, I think what I've seen is a little bizarre in some of the mock drafts. I've seen them linked with a big, and I
Which
think
they can definitely use.
which they could use,
Yeah.
but you have Mark Williams,
Maybe like a 4.
and then you have your decision on Miles Bridges. So that's going to have to be decided long before they go in that draft room. I could see them taking a guard here, just to add depth to that room.
Yeah, their backcourt besides LaMelo isn't deep at all. I mean, they as a team aren't deep. They they're not good.
Yeah, they lost PJ Washington, they lost Terry Rozier.
Yeah, they lost a lot of production and didn't return as much.
So
They brought in Grant Williams though.
They did. Tennessee great Grant Williams. Kind of amazing to see just how productive PJ Washington has been in Dallas in these playoffs.
Which makes you question what they're doing down in Charlotte.
Yeah.
I mean, they fired their coach and promoted someone within the
Charles Lee. I mean, Lee has
yeah.
been a hot prospect on the coaching scene for a while. I just feel like they're never a marquee. They don't hire the Billy Donovans or
Charlotte.
Yeah,
they haven't had like a name as their coach in a while.
And Lee, I mean, Lee's been in some tremendous places, no doubt about it, and is well liked and well regarded. So it might be the right move, especially if you're building a young team. But they've got issues.
They remind me of the Hawks, where they're just worse, but they're just existing in this mediocrity. Like they know Trae Young, LaMelo, but it's just what else? Like they're
in
Chicago, which we'll get to. But moving on to Portland at 7,
and also 14.
7 and 14. With Portland again, I think they have nice pieces like these teams, but they have to figure out who they're keeping in their backcourt. Their front court, I think they should definitely draft a front court player, either a wing or a big. I don't know who in this draft, but they have so many guards and they have to figure out what they're gonna do. Simons, Scoot, Shaedon Sharpe,
and Malcolm
Brogdon. And those are all, I think, gonna be quality NBA players, but you have to figure out who you're gonna keep because you can't.
Yeah, Portland's got decisions to make. I agree. I don't think they know. No. I don't think they know of those 3 guards. All right.
Well, they just paid Ant a lot of money. Simons.
Yeah, but they had to.
Yeah. But I don't know, that contract isn't an asset, I feel like, at this point.
Well, I think he's reliable. I think he's a guy you could move. He's proved he's a 20+ scorer. The question is, who you giving the keys to the team to?
You got to give it a Scoot, I think. He was a second overall pick. I mean, rookie guards always suck. So I don't blame, like, this season, I don't think people had way too high of expectations because we've seen guys like Luka and Trae and Jason Tatum recently come in and take over. But traditionally, rookie guards have always been awful. I mean, Darius Garland was horrible, and then he went on to be an all-star. And on a lesser extent, Jordan Poole was statistically the worst player in the NBA his rookie year, and then went on to be a very important piece of a championship team.
And then not at all.
Well, yeah, I said on a lesser note.
Yeah.
But I like Scoot a lot. I think Scoot has a lot of potential. So I think you give him the keys. And he also did get better as the season progressed, which shows, there's the improvement there.
Portland, to me, I was a little surprised. They don't have a great fit. Let's start there in their roster. I was surprised they didn't play very well. You've got guys at three different timelines. You've got
Yes.
the Scoots, the Shadens, even Simons to an extent. Then you've got the Grants, the Brogdons, and then in
Like the Robert Williams too.
Williams and Ayton are
Yeah.
kind of in that middle. And individually, some of these guys have value. I mean, if
Well, yeah, I mean, they were used to trade for big pieces.
Yeah.
But I think they have to move Brogdon. He just doesn't fit the timeline or the roster construction. I like Robert Williams as a player, but if they're going to move forward with Ayton, which I don't know if you do at this point, Ayton. I mean, talk about a guy who's lost all his value.
well, what do you do with Jeremy Grant?
Again, Jeremy Grant doesn't fit their timeline.
But he's way overpriced.
He's way overpriced, so I don't know how you move him. They have definitely decisions to make, but first I think they have to address who they're keeping before adding these guys to the draft.
Right. No, for sure. And I think just positionally, take one of each. Take a guard, take a big. Or
Well,
take a
I
wing.
think the guard they're good. I think the wing and a big.
Yeah. I don't love what.
And I mean they have some shooting, but you can always add. It's not like they're riches.
Yeah.
And then we have 8 San Antonio. We already talked about them. I would love to see them get Dalton connected this pick.
Right.
I think that would be a good fit. Or I mean, like you said, the big.
We talked about shooting. I
Yeah.
think Connect fits well here.
But I think a big if they get Klingon at 4. But I think playmaking is their first need, and then. But we talked about them, so we can go right on to number 9 with Memphis. Memphis. That's a conundrum of a team because we don't know what they are at this moment in time, with Ja missing basically the whole year.
I think they need a big.
You don't like Jaren Jackson?
I do, but he's the only guy.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know that he can bear up under a full load, full season. Although he played very well this
Yeah.
year. Always a great defender, and his
His
shot is good. What I would say with Memphis is, though, the problem where they're picking, they're kind of in
at this point.
between.
At this point in the draft, there's
Right.
yeah,
Like if Klingon hasn't gone,
but there's no shot at that.
that's a done deal. But now you're starting to reach on: do I take a Zach Edey this early?
No.
Do I take a Khalil Ware?
But you're set that they need a big. You think?
Yeah, their guards are. You got Bain and Moran.
But defensively, their guards are. I mean, I'm not saying take a defensive guard at the 9th overall pick, but I mean, I think their front court is good in terms of.
I mean, who do they have besides Jaren Jackson? Is Clark?
Brandon Clark? No, but he's not a starter. I think he's a connecting piece.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. That's one you could see movement. You could see that
Yeah.
up or down if there's a guy. That
I think all these guys in these tweener spots, the picks, especially in this type of draft, if the guy you want isn't there, I would say move the pick.
Yeah, if you
don't,
if you can get a 25 pick. You know,
yeah, don't
do it.
force.
Yeah, for sure.
Then we have Utah at 10. I think Utah's a decent team if they add a piece or two.
Utah's a situation. They've got a guy. You look at Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah.
Jordan Clarkson is valuable around the league. You know exactly what you're getting in him, right? And he doesn't fit your timeline because they have a really expanded timeline.
I don't think they have time.
But I don't know why they didn't try to move him at the
Deadline.
At the deadline, especially if you knew, hey, we're going to semi-tank here.
Yeah, they're
into a bad draft. I don't get what they're doing. I would say big depth here because
Laurie, Walker Kessler. It's kind of they have to decide. I mean, I would focus more personally. And they also have John Collins, a backcourt player. Especially if Jordan Clarkson, if he's going to stay on the team. I like Keontae George from last year. I think he has a case for all rookie first. I think he'll definitely be on one of the teams, and I like him as a player. I think really though they need not saying this is available at this point,
Yeah.
but like a dynamic scorer.
Would you take a Ron Holland type here?
I mean, that's like probably the exact opposite of what I just said about
No,
dynamic
forget
scorer.
Yeah, but I'm saying
Uh,
he's a wing,
Yeah, I like I
athletic.
like. Yeah, they definitely need a wing guy. I just don't know if his skill set is best suited for that.
And I kind of wonder if
And I like Taylor Hendricks too.
yeah, we didn't get to see a ton
A
of
ton of them, but
him. What I think if we were in a different draft, if Utah had the 10th pick last year, I think we would say this is exactly who they should get.
yeah.
And now it's like
Yeah, I don't know. I regardless, I don't think they're going to be in position to contend after this. But I think if they make the right selection, maybe move a couple pieces, they could be a playoff team next year. I don't think they're that far off.
they're not far off, but I don't think they can sign a free agent. It's hard to sign guys in Utah. And trade wise, what you're getting back for Clarkson isn't going to be a ready-made guy. I don't know. They have some serious
Sexton,
decisions.
they move off Sexton probably.
Yeah, I don't know that he has a ton of value
Yeah.
at this point.
11, we have Chicago. We mentioned briefly. They've been in this stage of mediocrity for a couple years now, and I think this is the point. What do you do with LaVine?
Yeah, I think
they're gonna. I think he's gone. I would predict that he's gone after this.
But where?
No, but I think they're gonna move from him.
Yeah, there's
especially with the emergence of Kobe White.
There's not a team more mediocre that's more arrogant at this point because
they have not tried anything new.
They kept their core intact. They could have gotten value for DeRozan, maybe not full value, but they could have gotten value. Now you're stuck. Vucevic is is either out of contract or has a player option or something. It's bad.
They're screwed because they waited too long. Like you said, they're arrogant because DeRozan is old. LaVine is not old yet, but almost old. Vucevic is definitely old. And they didn't capitalize with that talent or moving that talent. And I mean, Kobe White, obviously he emerged. So I think he's going to be good in the backcourt. But also you have these weird pieces like Patrick Williams. Like, what do you do with him? So, and at this point in the draft, I don't know. Yeah, they're going to be mediocre again next year, regardless, I think.
Yeah, and I think this is a team that has to figure out, all right, we are going to not sign this guy.
I think
we're going to try to trade this guy and then pick somebody to hopefully down the road maybe could fill that spot.
For them, I think they pick most potential here. They pick a guy
with Vucevic's contract situation, they may need a big here now.
Like a Ware, maybe? He would probably be around this.
Yeah, that's a reach, too. I think I've seen him lower. But, yeah, they need
I think they need someone with, like, booming potential, though. And I like... Okay. They kind of need a jump start to their organization. I personally think they're going to build through free agency rather than this draft class.
But they can't. I mean, they're
no. I'm saying they're going to have to. I think they're going to restart. I think this is probably the last year we see that DeRozan LaVine combo. Hopefully, because if not, I don't know what they're doing in that front office.
Every expert is like trade, and like, nah, we're good.
Yeah. 12 OKC. Sam Presti works his magic into the lottery again. I just think keep doing what you've been doing. Draft assets. Guys who, I mean, right now, at this pick, draft a guy who has high upside, who's a project, stuff him in the G League, stash him in the G League, like you've been doing with Ousmane Dieng, guys like that.
Well, they have two needs as I see it. They do need some big depth.
I agree, but I don't know if you have a plug and play guy at 12 at the big spot here.
Yeah. And then they need some shooting.
They do need some shooting.
Yeah, and the issue they're going to face is what do we do with Josh Giddey? Because
I think it's time to move on.
He's not played well, and they can't figure out when to play him and where to play him, and he's not a good fit with Shea because he's not a great shooter. Yeah, I love what they've done. I love the assets they have. Now, is this the year they're going to spend some of those
Yeah.
assets?
Well, with all the picks too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with you that they need shooting and they need a big. But I mean, with Presti, I expect him to add to that embarrassment of riches. Maybe draft a guy with a lot of potential. But I agree.
This is a landing spot for Malik Monk.
OKC.
Yeah. They have the money, and he fits a need.
Shooting.
With shooting, he can play with Shea. Very good in the open court, and he's a solid defender. I like him. I like him here
I just
because I don't think they're going to sign a Paul George. You know,
no.
so he's an interesting spot, and then 13 is Sacramento. They're like a lot of the teams in this lottery that you don't know have they hit their ceiling.
No.
They have two very good players.
And I like Keegan Murray a lot. I think it's time to move on from Harrison Barnes. I would go for that wing position. And if you're gonna go in with the shooting, go all in on the shooting because they have Herter, they have Sabonis. I mean, Herter, they have Murray. If you're gonna go with the shooting, let's go all in on the shooting. Is that going to be your identity, or are you gonna be, play fast like they have been? Figure out what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
your identity.
This is a spot where you're not going to get a superstar.
But this is a spot where they can get a plug and play guy a 4-year college guy.
Yeah, the guys I'm thinking of, the Mark Sears, the Terrence Shannons.
Shannon, yeah. Shannon for the shooting. Sears, I don't know because I don't like Sears fit here. And that's definitely a reach at 13 for Mark Sears.
But those type of 4-year guys who can get you a bucket when you need it.
I like Shannon here. I like Shannon. If he beats his case.
Yeah, Shannon has got a lot.
He's got a major question here.
Yeah. And we talked about Portland's got Golden State's pick at 14. So
we already talked about them.
All right.
So
we wanted to touch on
Combine.
Just some things to keep in mind. First, this is the first year that every prospect, unless you have an excuse, has to participate in the measurement and I think the athletic testing drills.
The medicals as well.
Right, the medicals. And it's strange. If you're considered in a certain tier, your medicals are only shared with teams picking in that tier. Like Alex Sarr only has to give his medicals to the top 10 teams picking, which is bizarre. Because if you really want Sarr and you want to trade with Atlanta, you may not see his medical.
I don't understand why medicals aren't public.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But the deal they cut with the NBAPA did not require players to participate in 5-on-5.
Yeah.
And so right now they're playing, and there's 2-3 first rounders in there, surefire. Maybe Justin Edwards.
No, there's a couple guys in this draft that will go first round that are playing, but it's like every other year where this is the second round showcase, the 5-on-5 combine. I mean, however, I did like that we got to see all of them in their testing. We don't normally see the first overall pick, see what his vert is, see his measurables.
Right. And there were, again, you could be excused if you had an injury or
the overseas guys that their season's still going on.
Right. And I think the ESPN folks have talked about the French League playoffs start tomorrow. So the executives are flying off to France to see primarily Rissache.
Yeah.
Who's somewhere in the top couple
5
picks. Yeah. There was a dispute as to whether his player comp was Michael Porter Jr. And ESPN's experts said, no, he's not that. He's more a Jaden McDaniels. From what I know about him, he's more of an energy defender.
I need to watch his tape more before this the draft to kind of get a feel for what he is, because he hasn't played in on national TV like that.
Right. We didn't get the showcase that
So
that Wemby
yeah.
got last year. And then June 4th is a Euro camp. I don't think that's the official name. And some of the top guys, Nikola Topic, who is a point guard.
He's injured though. Is he going to be good to
It's
go?
a sprain.
Okay.
By the 4th, he should be okay, certainly for the interview process. But they'll want to see some guys like that. I think Risa Shea will be there, and some of the other potentials. We did see a Euro player in the 5-on-5s, Nikola Jurisic from Serbia, and he's a 6'8", sort of point forward type, athletic-ish. Made a really nice behind the back pass. Made a couple dunks today. He's looked like, okay, I can see stuff there.
If his name's Nikola and his last name ends with itch,
He's a player.
I'm taking him.
Yeah.
Not even the Jovic and Jokic. Well, we got the Mirotic, Vucevic. This guy's a criminal now, but Pekovic was a player back in his.
Oh, that's Gil Arenas. He's calling in. We got to stop pushing the European.
Oh my bad. The Euro native, the narrative.
So these guys who are in the draft will have until May 29. The U.S. Players, I think the foreign players have a later date, but they have to stay in or withdraw by the 29th. Obviously, the name everyone's going to be watching is Bronny James, and I think we're going to have to devote more time to him than we see here today, especially since his second scrimmage hasn't taken place. But we have strong feelings on that, on perhaps different sides of it.
Differing views on that, but I think the media has given that enough coverage for this. We can get into that on a later date once we're getting our mock draft, and
right, because he won't be in mine. Yeah, so some of the guys who've stood out, and I think, Logan, you put it correctly, this is a second round.
There's no starters in this
audition,
draft,
right.
in the combine, at least playing in the 5-on-5.
Baylor Shireman,
Yeah.
Creighton,
NBA player, I
he
think.
has a bit of Dalton Connect in him. I think he's a superior shooter to Connect. Maybe not the athlete.
Not the athlete. I don't know about the shooting. I think
he's a very good shooter.
I know he's a good shooter, but all right. Yeah.
But I think he's actually moved late first round.
I think he could be a late first rounder too. I don't know about his athleticism though at the NBA level. I think he could struggle on the defensive end.
Yeah, he's
solid. He's big too.
Yeah, he's a solid guy. He can get you some rebounds, but I agree his biggest problem is athleticism. We've seen a couple guys, Jamal Shed, big fan of. I think the ESPN analyst Sean Farnham described him as I would describe him. He's a winner. That's all he does is win.
And I think we're going to see about Shed how we have in years past. Teams overlook these long-time college smaller guards, but they're often ready. Like Jalen Brunson's the best example.
Right.
But I think even this past year, he was a rookie. Marcus Sasser had a decent year. Nobody expected anything out of him, but he produced. Granted, it's for the Pistons. But I think Shed has a place in the league, and it could be like a Javon Carter.
Yeah.
Because both are great defenders, undersized, but very good college players. I think he can definitely carve out a place in the league.
Shed was the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, in the Big 12.
No.
In the country.
In the country.
Yeah, I think.
And was the player of the year, and his injury is what arguably prevented Houston from getting to the Final Four. Not a polished scorer, not a fantastic shooter, but hits shots when he needs to. I think he's a plug-and-play backup point guard for 10 years.
Jose Alvarado.
They've another good comparison. I think Shed is a little better offensively. Alvarado's maybe got a tad more quickness.
Yeah, but I think that's a prototype where he can definitely model his game after these guys and stay in the league.
Yeah, but I think Shed comfortably second round, early second round. If I'm a team that needs a backup point guard, done. Um, Another guy who has shown he's a pro, Coleman Hawkins. I'm not the biggest fan of Hawkins.
I'm definitely higher on Hawkins than he is. I think Hawkins is a guy who can do it all, like a jack of all trades, master of none. But I think he's very impressive. His versatility, especially at his size, and like what he did for Illinois this year, he connected everything for them.
Yeah,
led them to the Elite Eight. I think he can definitely play in the NBA.
I think he's a connecting piece.
Yeah.
Some other guys that have stood out at least in the first day of the scrimmages. Enrique Freeman.
Yeah, I really like Freeman. His story is great. He went from a walk on to the MEAC Player of the Year. MAC Player of the Year, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And he really showed he can hit shots.
Yeah.
And he has a very long arms. He's a little undersized for his position, but his wingspan makes up for that on the defensive end, and he's stretching the floor. And he got that invite from the G League Combine. So
yeah, he and Boogie Ellis, the G League Combine, Janelle Davis turned it down, so he's clearly staying at Kansas.
Arkansas.
Arkansas, sorry. So he's staying. KJ Lewis pulled out. I think he's going back to Arizona or somewhere.
That's expected.
And in their place, Boogie Ellis was selected, and Boogie Ellis got promoted to the combine, the big combine. Showed out the first day, hit a bunch of shots. He's a
pro somewhere.
He's a pro somewhere. He's a bucket. Beyond that, we got.
I don't know if he's an NBA player, but he'll definitely make a lot of money putting the ball in the basket somewhere.
Sure.
So
we're gonna key in on the draft. That's coming up in 6 odd weeks or so. So NBA free agency, we'll touch on that. But our last topic today is
the losers of the transfer portal.
Yeah, and we're not done. There's a couple guys who are in the draft who might drop out of the draft.
Who are in the portal.
Right, who are in the portal.
Bronny James. No, I'm joking.
There's some talk he might go to Ohio State with that jersey.
No. But yeah, no, so we'll go over our losers. Who do you think has either lost the most production or has not got a fish in this big pond yet?
I've got 5.
Dang, okay.
5 teams. One is Villanova.
I agree.
They took a lot of transfers last year. It was a terrible fit. They have lost so much production between graduation, transfers,
and draft. With Mark Armstrong staying.
And Mark Armstrong staying, yeah. I don't know what their plan is. Right now they have about 6 scholarship players.
Counting the 2 transfers.
Counting the 3 transfers.
Oh.
I don't dislike the 3 guys they got. They got Max Scholga, an experienced guard from VCU. He's a more of a facilitator, though not a pure facilitator. He's a decent enough shooter, good defender, decent body type. And then they got 2 smaller guards, Jameer Brickus from LaSalle and Perkins from Penn. But they're smaller. They are experienced scorers. No really highly rated recruits coming in off a bad year like this when apparently they have money. Randy Foy, I read, was in charge of putting together their NIL fund. They're not a poor college. I
don't know what they're doing.
I don't know what they're doing.
0 front court bringing in, and you're losing your best player, Eric Dixon, a front court player.
Well, Dixon has the option to come back.
Has he made a comment on whether he's going to?
No word.
But you're also losing so much production, and you're bringing in 3 little guards. If they don't turn something around quick, and no big recruits, because this is going to be Kyle Neptune's last year.
Well, Villanova has a history of sticking with guys.
And I respect that, and I think a coach. I think we're too quick to fire coaches, but this is a horrible offseason, and they weren't good last year. So, and they're bringing back a far less talented roster. I
Yeah.
don't know what they do.
And it's a weak Big East comparatively,
We'll
although
see. I mean, we don't know.
UConn and
The reigning national champs are.
yeah, I mean they're at the top. Yeah, we've got UConn, you got Creighton, you've got Marquette. Certainly look good. St. John's might be better, but there's room.
Yeah, no, it's there's a spot to grab there,
Yeah.
but it's not looking likely for the Wildcats.
No. Another team, Miami, has lost a lot of production.
I did I disagree with labeling them as a loser though.
Well, here's my view on that. They lost their starting point guard in Bensley Joseph.
Yeah.
They lost their starting
Shooting
guard or three or whatever you want to put.
Wooga,
an NBA prospect on the rise, whose season was compromised by injury.
Yeah.
He definitely started out way better than he ended, and then Norchad Omir, who is a
great player.
So you lose those three guys.
And they also lost some depth on the bench. Not necessarily production, but depth.
Well, and they're going to lose Kaishan George to the NBA draft.
I agree that they are a loser in terms of production, but I don't want to say a loser in how they're using the portal because they're bringing in. They got Brandon Johnson. They have Lynn Kidd. They got a Blackman from Stetson, who's a bucket. Am I missing anybody?
No, I think it's just those three.
And with Jaleel Buffet coming in, I don't think they're gonna be like. I think it's a completely different situation from Villanova.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Villanova's in much worse shape, but I would say you just lost your best defender, and they were not good defensively.
Yeah.
So this kid Blackman from Stetson, very nice player on the offensive end. Maybe fills the production of a Wooga Poplar, but Lynn Kidd to me I've seen have really solid games, and I've seen really scratch your head type games. But okay, I don't think they've replaced what they lost.
Agreed, but I think if Bethea is who we think he is coming in, I don't think there's a need to fill all that when you're getting not a horrible you have a decent transfer class coming in.
Yeah,
3 quality players.
Yeah, and I think they've at least filled
voids.
Positional needs. My concern is when you lose a guy like Norchad Omir.
Well, that's a hole that's hard.
He's a local kid.
Oh, kind of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And it played high school ball here. And came back home from Arkansas State.
Yeah.
That's disheartening.
No, and I was very sad to see him go. I think I love him as a player. I mean, he's gonna do great at Baylor, but that was a big loss for the Canes. But I don't think I get where you're coming. I can come around to calling them a loser, but I don't think they're necessarily gonna be bad next year because of this.
Right. I'm just saying I don't think they replaced and they have, as we've seen before with Nigel Pack, one of the very healthy NIL budget.
Yeah, no. Maybe they're not done.
The other teams I have as not yet winning in the transfer portal. Let's say Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin lost AJ Storr, Chucky Hepburn, Esigian, I think somebody else. The heart of their team, and especially the way Storr played in the Big Ten championship.
And Chucky Hepburn was the heart of their team, I think, for 3 years.
Yes, I don't think that they've now Wisconsin will find some guy somewhere and he'll plug right in, but I don't like what they've lost versus what they've brought in.
Yeah, I've just pulled it up. They don't have really a big transfer coming in. Yeah, I like that. So who are your other two losers?
The other two are Also Florida teams. FAU. I mean, how
Oh
could you
yeah, how could you
not?
not? How could you not?
Yeah, we're granted they're maybe not a Power Five, but a team that has been deep into the NCAA tournament recently, uh, losing
Everything.
everything.
Yeah, no. Even their guys on the bench.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different situation in Boca Raton this year.
I did like their hire though, with the Baylor assistant. I thought that was a great hire. However, I definitely think they're not going to be in the national spotlight this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, they lost everybody.
They lost everybody. They were rated, and then the other team is USF. USF,
Young blood to Alabama.
right? Miguel, Selton Miguel,
San Miguel to Maryland.
and Kason Pryor,
Just committed to Louisville.
right?
Yeah, no, that's it's a good call. Yeah, they lost. I'm surprised because I like their coach Abdur Rahim. I think I thought they were gonna try to build something in the American, at least those core pieces.
Yeah, they finished first in the American.
Yeah, I mean,
which is
and I
crazy.
thought they had if the bubble wasn't so big this year, I thought they had a chance to maybe make the tournament. They were definitely, on the bubble there. I was very surprised that all those guys transferred out. I think they're gonna try to have like an FAU kinda where they're trying to return those guys for one more year. But yeah, no, that's a good call. I definitely agree there.
But again, the all the transfers haven't yet committed. There's not many left that are impactful, but they're guys who, if you're missing a big, if you're missing a backup point guard, missing a shooter, something like that, that they're around.
Yeah. And speaking of the portal, for our last segment, I want to talk about Will Wade, or as I call him, the American Gangster. One of the best recruiters and coaches in the game, and they just got this past week Quadir Copeland from Syracuse transferring there. Copeland was a 10-point a game scorer in the ACC, and Will Wade convinced him to go to the Southland Conference and live in Lake Charles. That's amazing.
We say this with all fondness. The American Gangster title is a sign of respect.
It's a sign of respect.
I'm an OG.
Especially in this day and age with that NIL, that's a sign of respect.
And Lake Charles isn't North Dakota, so let's pause a little there. It's not that far away from the nice city of New Orleans, and probably not that far from Houston.
Okay. They also added Brandon Murray, who was from Ole Miss, and he had been at Georgetown. And they also added
LSU.
And yeah, it was a fourth term.
Yeah.
And Sincere Parker from St. Louis. So 3 really quality pickups for Will Wade, and adding to a roster that we saw make the tournament. They have other Power 5 transfers. Mike Saunders from Utah.
They just added another guy. We talked about him. It'll come to me. But another player that intrigued me. They're going to
run the Southland Conference this year, and it would not surprise me if they are at some point a top 25 team. And I recently saw they are having major trouble scheduling non-conference games because nobody wants to play them, especially at their home. I think right now they only have like 5 games in a tournament scheduled, and none of them are at home. It's a similar problem that like past low major powerhouse teams have faced, where it's like Princeton faced that this year. Nobody wants to play them at their home place.
Yeah, or Charleston back in the day.
Yeah, it's
VCU, those types of teams.
So they're gonna. Last year, their non-conference schedule, even though they had some good wins in there, it went viral on Twitter after they made the tournament because they played a school like Women's University of Mississippi. Because they had to fill out, like, I was a men's team, but that was the university name, because they had to fill out their schedule because they saw Will Wade and they saw that roster. They had Shahada Wells, they had all these great guys. So, but if they manage to get some marquee games scheduled, probably away from home, and if they win a couple of those, it would not surprise me if they're a top 25 team at some point.
And the more interesting question is, where does he go next year?
I'm surprised he didn't already move up. I think maybe that stigma of what happened at LSU is holding him back. But however, I think schools that are looking at that are stupid because it's NIL. What he's doing, what he did back then, is legal now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
but we've seen it in other sports. We've seen guys that sort of have to serve their time in the wilderness. Even Rick Pitino was at Iona.
no,
Um, we're going to see, though, it'll be interesting to see what teams next year, when the seats heat up, who is it? Who
calls?
who
Will Wade.
calls? Yeah,
And they have a really good staff down there too, regardless of when he leaves. But yeah, no, just keep an eye out for McNeese State definitely next year. I want to put that out there after they made that couple big commits this past week.
absolutely. All right, that's going to wrap it up for episode 3. Thanks for tuning in.
Mhm.
If you're interested in sponsoring, give us a shout. But we're going to come back next week with possibly talking about EYBL. There's going to be a session this weekend.
I believe so, and definitely more about the combine. We'll dive deeper into that once all of that's wrapped up.
Right, and then we can start. Once the May 29 date passes, we can start looking at conferences because most of the movement will be
We'll
done.
also get into our mock draft, but we'll leave that for a later date.
Right.
We won't tell you too much now.
All right.
All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in for episode 3 of the Amateur-ish podcast. We'll catch y'all next week. Peace.